Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Are you ready? Okay, Vina, could you shut the lights out? Thank you. Whoops, okay. All right, so hello, welcome to the 2024 annual meeting of Sakonnet Preservation. This marks our 52nd year protecting the rural character and natural resources of Little Compton for the benefit of the community. Thanks to conservation-minded landowners, our essential memberships, funding support, and the services of literally hundreds, and I mean that literally, hundreds of energetic, passionate, and dedicated board and community members over all these years. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay. I hope you'll take advantage of writer Sydney Tynan's generous offer of copies of her latest book, Even More Country Letters, that she contributed to benefit Sakonnet Preservation. There are copies here at this meeting for you to take, or you can pick them up at our office at your convenience. The back 40 she lovingly describes in her writing, which you may have seen in the Sakonnet Times or in her books, is permanently protected with an SPA conservation easement. And the cover photo on her current book was taken by our former stewardship director, Mary Kate Kane. Sydney intended that your voluntary donation for each copy will support our work. Thank you, Sydney. So now I'd like to fill you in on some of the highlights of 2023. We acquired an easement on this open field in December of 2023 belonging to Bunny Milliken that adds 2 roadfront acres protecting an exquisite view from Warrens Point Road across Stonewall and Field to a distant view of the ocean and the Elizabeth Islands. This generosity was followed by an additional easement she donated in April of this year that abuts another she currently owns off West Main Road. Interest in conservation in our community remains high, as does our desire to participate as we are able, addressing housing affordability. Here's Nan Haffenreffer, our board member, presenting an award to a Wilbur School 8th grader that is named for Lori Richmond Goodnow, the Young Naturalist Award. And it's given to an 8th grader each year with an exceptional interest in the natural world. These initiatives, coupled with our newsletters, movie series, and speakers, reflect our commitment to keeping conservation education a core part of our mission. Yearly inspection and management of our 81 individual parcels of land continues to occupy a good deal of the work we do. Our team of over 30 volunteers, ably led by our stewardship director, Adam Yorks, continues to ensure we are responsibly handling the challenges of protecting the conservation values on each one and maintaining trails on our public access properties. We continue intensive forest management on the Blanchard and Blazer properties, tree planting by the Little Compton Tree Committee, as well as invasive control activities with help from community volunteers and Audubon's Youth Conservation League, and the rebuilding of a portion of this stone wall along John Dyer Road with financial assistance from the Little Compton Garden Club represent some of our most active land management projects. And you'll soon be hearing again about Meehan Triangle and how it's captured our attention. Now I'd like to ask Bill Terrio to come up to the podium as our treasurer and give a summary of our 2023 finances.
I'll keep this brief so we can get to the folks that we really came here to hear. I'd like to point out a couple of things on this slide, though. First, 2022 to 2023 is not really a good apples-to-apples comparison. If you'll recall, we had significant fundraising efforts in 2022, and as a consequence, our expenses and revenues in that year were both significantly higher than usual. The purpose of that fundraising effort was to try and generate enough investable assets so that the earnings on those assets would cover at least 50% of our annual operating costs. As you can see from the 2023 results, we're well on our way to accomplishing that. In fact, in 2023, our total investment returns exceeded our total operating expenses, and our cash investment returns were over half of the total cash expenses. Currently, our investable assets, which you see up above, are invested in a mix of CDs, laddered and yielding approximately 5%, and mutual funds. As those CDs start to mature, and as we anticipate interest rates are falling, then as some of those CDs mature, we're going to have to reconsider how we have our investments and what the mix is going to be. But we're at this point pretty darn happy with the success of our fundraising efforts and with the results that we've been able to achieve. I'm happy to answer any questions, or I'll be around if somebody wants to corner me later on.
Bill has just been incredible help to us, very conscientious and knowledgeable with our finances. So I have a job for those of you who are members, which is to give you the nominating committee's slate of officers and directors for 24-25 and ask you to vote on them. So here's the list. Abigail Brooks, the forever president. John Cook, vice president. Sorry?
Peter Rowley's vice president.
No, does it say that up there? That's wrong. Peter Rowley is secretary, but that's all right. We had to have some glitch somewhere. Okay. So John Cook, vice president, Bill Terrio continuing as treasurer, and Peter Rowley stepping up as secretary. And directors, Paul Bazzoni, McCall Brownell, Herb Case, Davy Cutts, Nan Haffenreffer, Maureen Hayes Harrington, Warren Jagger, Sheila McIntosh, Jeff Manning, Jeannie McAllister, and Judy Melanson. May I have a motion supporting the nominating committee's slate of officers and directors for the coming year?
So moved.
A second? Second. Any questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. It's amazing. It's an amazing crew of board members, and it has been during my entire tenure. It's just been such an honor to work with some really remarkable people in this community willing to step up to the responsibilities that land conservation requires. We extend a heartfelt thank you to Ann Beardsley for her 9 years of service on our board. As board secretary and chair of our stewardship committee, she stepped in over and over to fill gaps between staffing for our stewardship director position. She led our active stewardship committee while contributing her expertise to policy work and serving with even-handed thoughtfulness on our executive committee. We're so appreciative. Thank you, Ann. Before I introduce this evening's speakers, I'd like to thank our board members and staff for stepping up so willingly to assist with this event. Also to be thanked are Clarkshire Media for taking on the videography of this meeting, and the unfailingly helpful and friendly staff of the Little Compton Community Center, especially Chef Dave Renier for his catering creativity, and Amy Mooney for her organizing help, all of them ensuring the success of this evening. We are really pleased to be in this building. The only challenge is accommodating as many people as we'd like to have at our meeting upstairs when we present, but we just love this place. It's just been incredible to us. So this brings to a close the business portion of the meeting. May I have another motion to close it, please? Oh, plenty of seconds. Is there any discussion about closing the business portion? No. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, I think the motion carries. All right. So, moving on. So, I want you to linger a little bit on that slide, because on the right-hand side, here I go. Just a piece of work that's just so beautiful, that represents how much this project has meant to all of us that have worked on it. It's really been a privilege to work for Joy and me, to work with our stewardship director, biologist Adam Yorks, gardener Jeremy Allen, and artist and gardener Josie Richmond on the preparation for this presentation about our Me and Triangle project. Shoot. Where's the Kleenex? Joy knew. I'm just so moved by this. It's just been probably one of the most lovely interactions and work that we've done on a project together. And in my memory, we've never really featured one of our properties. And boy, is this a way to start. In our lively and passionate conversations about the project, Josie summarized the basis of what we've been doing and need to continue. Let the magic happen, she said, expressing what has occurred as we observe and manage this singular and unique property as a habitat and native plant protection experiment. The magic is what keeps happening as we step back enough to allow nature to take its course with minimal intervention, timed as best we know how, based on what we are seeing this property offer of shelter, nesting sites, and food, as well as food for the eye, as you can see from this beautiful map that she did, as each season unfolds. We must accept that it is a dynamic and constantly changing landscape, that it is a journey of discovery and surprises. To give you some background about the property, this is a 1939 photo of the newly straightened length of West Main Road at the head of Taylor's Lane, designed to accommodate the delivery of the 68-foot, 143-ton cannon-like artillery for installation in the several gun emplacements at Sakonnet Point during World War II. The road straightening created what became known to us as the Meehan Triangle because in November of 1982, SBA received the gift of these 2.3 acres from owners Phoebe and David Meehan. This is what it looked like for the 40 years from acquisition in 1982 through 2021, when SBA was simply mowing once a year in the fall. In 2019, Marty and Dick Fisher, local propagators of native plants, offered some of their plants to us. This offer sparked our thinking about where we might experiment with and demonstrate a model of managing a property with the goal of supporting wildlife habitat that highlights the role of native plants. The visibility and public access possibilities of Meehan Triangle made it our best option for such a project. In March of 2022, the hiring of biologist Adam Yorks as our stewardship director, with his experience doing baseline documentation for the Agricultural Conservancy Trust, and his deep familiarity with the landscape and resources in the community, never mind his passion, provided us with the skills we needed to develop an educational project for the public and for us as its managers to learn from. The granting of funds to us by the Carl and Carol Acebi's Family Foundation for educational use provided the necessary resources to dedicate a portion of Adam's time, as well as funding, to contract some of the work on the project. Adam helped us build a team of board and community members. We brought in Gary Plunkett from the Tiverton Open Space Commission, Sue Terrio, Jeremy Allen, Doug McGrady, associated with the Rhode Island Wild Plant Society, and others representing the Little Compton Tree Committee, the Sakonnet Garden Club, the Boy Scouts. We met regularly to investigate and inventory what was already on the property, to remove invasives and plan management strategies. By September of 2022, a management plan worked on collaboratively was laid down as a start. Adam ordered a cutting machine he recognized would be most appropriate for maintaining habitat for the various species of plants, insects, and birds that we had already discovered were using the property and that continue to reveal themselves and amaze us. The magic. And Phoebe Meehan agreed to allow us to store this new equipment in her nearby garage. Now Adam will come to the podium to continue the story.
Thanks, Abigail. This is a milkweed bug nymph feeding on the seeds of the common milkweed plant at the edge of a Little Compton farm field a few Novembers ago. Though they only feed on seeds, these bugs are not known to pose a threat to the milkweed population. Instead, they are one of many prey species, along with beetles, assassin bugs, a moth, and of course the monarch butterfly, that are adapted to milkweed as their host plant. The biodiversity of insects that depend on milkweed ensures a robust predator population flourishes, allowing the plant community to flourish as a result. Complex ecological relationships like these exist all around us, formed over millions of years and creating the ecosystem we depend on and enjoy today. This drama playing out on a milkweed pod and its importance to the broader environment is hard to appreciate for many landowners and gardeners trying to clean up properties before winter sets in. But what happens when we try land stewardship centered on conservation? It starts with a group of community members coalescing around a property that has been well protected for decades. Interest and enthusiasm around the Meehan property was already high when I joined SPA in early 2022. I did not understand what the fuss was all about until I took my first visit that spring. The property had been mown the previous fall, and it didn't really look all that different from the nearby fields. As the first growing season progressed, a procession of showy native plants that are always exciting singular observations emerged jammed in side by side across the 2-acre parcel. As we continued to visit and observe, the density of growth and the display of biodiversity, now unconstrained by that yearly mowing, impressed all of us. We have the Turk's cap lily, the Virginia rose, the swamp azalea, and the white meadow sweet here. The amount of insects visiting the property was also notable, and we made the connection that many of these insects nest and overwinter on the property, which was one of the reasons why we decided not to mow that fall of 2022 for the first time in perhaps decades. Through our partnership with the Rhode Island Wild Plant Society, we welcomed botanist Doug McGrady to conduct a biological inventory in June of 2022. We were all very excited to walk the Meehan Triangle with Doug for a few hours, and his keen eye and deep knowledge of Rhode Island plants really opened our eyes to what makes this property special. Those of us interested in gardening, landscaping, or farming with our local environment in mind could really learn a valuable lesson from Doug and brush up on our plant identification skills. Some of us that do conservation work in town maintain a list of all the species we encounter, all the plant species, which is not by a long shot every species that exists in Little Compton, but many of them. This is my latest draft of that plant list, with the plant species we've documented on the Meehan Triangle shown here in green. Not only did we have to add many species to this list after the surveys of the Meehan Triangle, but we can see that approximately 20% of all the species documented in Little Compton are found on the Meehan Triangle, which is less than 1/6,000th of the total land area of town. Our plant list currently stands at about 120 species, the majority of which are native species that have existed in the Sakonnet region for millennia and in turn sustain our native wildlife with food and habitat. We have not had any fauna surveys done yet, so we'll have to get some entomologists to the property eventually. So, to go through the plant list briefly, we've got 9 species of trees and shrubs. Trees and shrubs loaded with fruits are especially valuable for migratory birds passing through in the fall. Another reason why we do not mow the property every year. Behind the group here are some tupelos, which bear lots of fruit for birds in the fall. 28 shrubs and woody vines. They produce dense stands of nutrient-rich fruits and blossoms for migratory and resident birds, and are also an important host plant for insects that we saw on previous slides. The image here is of chokeberry, I think purple chokeberry. This is actually the species that the Rhode Island Wild Plant Society collected seeds from the Meehan property last year to start propagating this species at their nursery. So in the not too distant future, the descendants of the chokeberry plants from Meehan will be going out to other conservation properties and maybe make their way back to Little Compton as well. So that was an exciting thing that happened. 30 grass and grass-like plants, including sedges and rushes, one of which is listed as a state species of concern due to its rarity in Rhode Island that Doug McGrady found. Notable among these grasses are at least 4 species of warm season grasses. So warm season grasses use a different type of photosynthesis than most plants, and they are exceptionally drought tolerant. And when everything else kind of goes into a dormancy over the summer, these warm season grasses still keep cranking through, and that's a great species for us all to have on our meadows here. And then 5 ferns, including this royal fern, which is not a native species, but still showy. And so 38 or so herbaceous plants. So they provide lots of pollen and nectar for our insects, like irises, lilies, geraniums, milkweeds, goldenrods, and other species that ensure a continuous bloom procession throughout the growing season. Pictured here is hopness, also called groundnut. It's a vine with a big tuber. It's an undomesticated crop, which has traditionally been a staple food amongst indigenous peoples of the Americas within the natural range of the plant. So here's a vegetation community map that we developed just to try to discern the different ecosystem types on this small property. As the vegetation community further developed in 2023, the subtle differences in plant communities hinted at the underlying different zones, with the drier south end giving way to the waterlogged north. So we have maritime shrubland, we have fen, and that northern edge, which is kind of a tangle of forsythia and a bunch of odd shrubs. We've learned from that other meadows on conservation properties are mown with a sickle bar mower, normally reserved for haymaking, since it cuts the plant stem once at the height of the operator's choosing, as opposed to chopping and mulching close to the soil surface, like most rotary mowers. The intact stems left behind by the sickle bar mower are still able to provide nesting habitat for native pollinators. Sakonnet Preservation Association purchased a 2-wheeled tractor with a sickle bar mower attachment November of 2022. The following spring, we mowed about 1 acre of the Meehan property with this new machine, carefully timing the mowing after the insects could emerge from their winter dormancy, but before the meadow plants leafed out too much. We left the majority of the property unmown as a refuge where the Meehan property's unique flora and fauna could more prolifically disperse into the surrounding area. Here's some drone footage captured by our intern last year, Helmy, of a fall mowing of a different Sakonnet preservation property outside Adamsville. This former agricultural field has lower diversity and higher invasive species cover than the Median Triangle, and an annual fall mowing is a pretty effective way of maintaining this clearing, which is at the edge of a large forest complex. Yep, and do I do the pirouette? There we go. All right. Okay, let's get wonky for a minute. So here is a graph I made showing about 3 years of mowing during the fall, which is a common practice and even required as a part of many conservation easements in town. So you can see the growth starts in the spring, and it gets up to about 36 inches tall, and then it drops off in October when we mow, and then it's short all winter, just a couple inches, and that repeats. So that's it allows for unimpeded growth of the plant community for most of the growing season, and mowing takes place around October every year when the leaves have begun falling and much of the fauna that use the habitat have migrated or gone into dormancy. Heavy tractors are often used while the land is relatively dry, before the winter rain and snow sets in and turns our heavy soils muddy. But there are several downsides to this model. The plant community starts from the literal bottom every spring, pushing it through its vegetative state so it can get to flowering and then pollination and then fruit set in time to make seed just so it can reproduce. So much energy to expend in one growing season only to get chopped down to a nub in the fall while overwintering animals still need something to eat and somewhere to rest. The soil is exposed to wind and rain erosion all winter, and non-native and invasive species are quick to establish and thrive in this disturbance, having the leg up every spring. So how can we improve stewardship? We could try annual spring mowing. So by using a purpose-built mower that is easy on waterlogged spring soils, we get out cutting just before growth ramps up. This is also before many fauna have emerged from dormancy or arrived following their spring migration. All winter, the land has been snug under a complex blanket of woody stems, herbs, and grasses that protected the soil and provided habitat structure. However, we still see that this complex community needs to start from the bottom after mowing every spring. So what other changes could be made? Okay. So we can try biennial spring mowing. This allows plants to build upon a previous year's growth, adding that additional height we see, producing more flowers for the pollinators, more fruit for the frugivores, the fruit eaters, and also lowers temperature and conserves water in the soil beneath the plant cover. More structural habitat, more nesting area for birds, and for germination of seeds. But we can still improve upon this. We don't really want to have our wildlife have to fight for their place every 2 years. So this is what we've been trying with the Median Triangle. So we rotate our mowing, biennial spring rotational mowing. This is the final graph, I promise. By mowing only a portion of the property every spring, a portion of the property. So we mow about an acre one spring, an acre another spring, or give or take. We see a landscape with plant community in several different stages. Whether it's a migratory visitor like the common yellowthroat warbler, or a permanent resident like the giant silk moth, there's always habitat, always nesting area, always foraging area, open areas for spring ephemeral plants, all in close proximity to one another. Where applicable, rotational mowing in the spring allows us to maintain open landscapes and views we are familiar with while greatly boosting the conservation value of the land. All the while, we're using less fuel and we're boosting water quality and quantity by conserving soil moisture. Rotations of 3 or more years are even possible without the property reverting into forest. So that is where we are at currently with the stewardship of the Median Triangle property. We will continue to observe and document, discuss, and explore on this property, as well as work with other land trusts and private landowners to see where we can apply these methods to improve the conservation value of the Little Compton meadows and shrublands. And with that, I'll hand off the podium to Jeremy. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Excuse me. Adam brought me to see my first Atlantic white cedar a few years ago, and I think ever since then we've been very good friends. And anyhow, that's me. So this is what I do for my real job. I'm a gardener. It's what I do all day, every day, whether I'm at my house with my wife and my kids, or working for other people. I've worked for this family for 4 generations. I was taught by Miriam Scott how to garden 25 years ago, and now I'm teaching her great-granddaughter how to plant leeks and onions and things like that, and it's super fun. But when you garden with just your hands and a wheelbarrow and a shovel, you don't really have the impact on the land that you want to have, because you want to turn it all into a garden. Maybe not like this, but one of the things that happened when I went to Me and Triangle is it was a magical place. The magical things happened, and I'm going to try to explain my experience with you with a few pictures that are not as good as Adam's. That's my friend Dave Palom, and that's Sue Terrio. And this is 2021, and we're just looking for weird grasses at this point. He was the steward at that time, and Mr. Palom's Poor Farm will be featured in a minute. That's the name of the farm. It's not actually a poor farm. But in 2021, this is just after it had been mowed, annually, but we were starting to see different things than you usually see, because I work on a lot of natural landscapes. I work on hundreds of acres of land in Little Compton. Sometimes I have to go all the way to Westport to work. But 99% or 95% of what I do is in town. This place has so many more species than any other place I've ever worked. The density is just, it's crazy. Oh, wait, I'll say a spoiler alert. So I'm a gardener, and what a gardener does when he gets, look, what do you want to do on this piece of property? I'm a member of the tree committee. Well, Me and Triangle definitely needs trees, right? So let's plant a tree. So we planted a white oak, a swamp white oak, the tree committee did. Jason Burchard planted it for us. And it's about 8 feet tall now. It's been on the ground about 4 years. But if you look just a little closer at this white oak, this picture was taken a few days ago when I mowed the path again. If you look to the left, that's a red maple. That's our state tree that grew up in the cage with the swamp white oak and is essentially the same size. It caught up to it, and it's going to blow past it. It's in its happy spot. Sometimes the gardener's not right. Sometimes the actual land is right. And I've learned that at many places, but one of the things about Meehan is it beats you over the head. That's the fairy ring without me in it. And it again, these magical, this is when I first mowed the path, so maybe it was 2022. And as we're laying out the path, we're going to talk a lot about paths, but these magical little things that you might want somebody to see. You can walk right up to this right now, today or tomorrow. This is the bushy blue stem, which, again, as someone who has watched grass grow in this town for my whole life, finding a new grass that's completely different, completely unique, I guess it's threatened, I don't know, but and universally loved in the weirdest way. You look at this grass. My wife is she's into flowers, and I brought this home and put it on the table for Thanksgiving, and it got to stay on the table. It was kind of nice. So what is the cool, so this is the serious part of the conversation. I've made too many jokes already. The most important thing in this picture is not Adam York, I'm sorry, or Abigail, or Sue, but the green sphagnum moss that's growing under everybody's feet. When Adam talks about the trees or the shrubs that we're leaving there, keeping moisture in the soil, that allows sphagnum moss to grow. Sphagnum moss is probably the most important plant on the planet, in my opinion, right now. If you have a lawn and you mow it all the time, or even a field and you mow it in the summer and it dries out, sphagnum moss cannot live there unless you have some serious shade. Your lawn will fix 100 tons of carbon a year, and that's nice. Me and Triangle with the sphagnum moss and the material that is left up will fix 10 times that. So it'll fix 1,000 tons of carbon per hectare, and that's significant. If you think about land use and preservation and just adjusting the mowing schedule, and this has been an experiment that we've been doing, but it's really working. This is a zoomed up. Now, I don't have the fancy camera that Adam does, but this is sphagnum moss zoomed in. If you go on the north side of any of your stone walls, maybe the north side of your house, or you have a wet area in your yard or your neighbor's yard, I really, really think this mowing technique is applicable to you. It's not for everybody. If you're high and dry or you're in Adamsville with the super drained soil, don't listen to me when I'm talking about this stuff. But holding the moisture in, fixing 10 times the amount of carbon just by adjusting your mowing schedule and how you mow, it's an easy fix. So this is my fancy machine. It's not as fancy as the SPA's, but this is what I mow the path with. And the thing about a path is it is not a set in stone thing. This is my first try and my second try because you can adjust it if you want to go visit a different tree. Right here, the irises were blooming on the right-hand side when I was mowing. When I went by, the iris prismatica, which is sort of the reason this whole project started, I think. One plant drew everybody in. We're like, oh, look at this beautiful plant. So I just moved the path over. So now you can walk by the iris and watch it bloom, and I'm not mowing it. Curves in paths are very important because then there's expectation and there's the great unknown. This is the entrance to the path right now, which is on Old Main Road. So if you see this little opening, we try to keep it a little discreet, so not everybody's in there, but there it is today. But again, there's mystery around that corner. So this is the circle that you'll see marked on Josie's art. The circle was this spot. When we walked through it, it was the lowest spot that wasn't completely underwater. And, the flowers always have to cheat their way into the pictures. It's a little bit annoying. But when you're there in that circle, you can just sort of squat down or bring a chair, or if you're short like me, you're not going to see the road. You're not going to see the road on either side. You're in the Mean Triangle. It's a great spot to sort of pause. The path's narrow, so you can't really walk side by each. But here in this area, you can be alone with the Mean Triangle, and it's probably one of my favorite spots. So there's the iris prismatica down at the bottom, okay? But look at the density of this. All the little purple foliage, that's all winterberry, okay? No one would ever design a garden and say, you need to plant 25 winterberries right next to your iris. It just wouldn't happen. But this density allows these plants, they work together as a team, and the density allows them to protect the soil so the soil doesn't dry out. And it just makes the most phenomenal, when the winterberry colors up and you can see it at 40 miles an hour, there's a lot of winterberry in that spot. This is the chokeberry, which I think we've already talked about, but the chokeberry, I don't know how to explain it. again, I pull weeds professionally. I've done it for 30 years or 25 years, whatever. I've never had one of these show up at a house. They just don't. And they're everywhere in the Mean Triangle, and it's unbelievable. The little planters that I brought tonight that are downstairs, there are little seedlings of this plant from Mean Triangle that Suterio germinated, and I borrowed. So again, not the greatest camera in the universe, but that is a lot of goldenrod, all happening with all that shrubby material at the same time. It's such a dense amount of material. It is, again, you would never ever draw a drawing for a planting like that. Okay, now we get to talk about the hot rod. So they let me drive this thing, and I have to say, when Adam was going through, oh, it has this feature and that feature, I'm like, I've got my billy goat, it's fine. Who needs all these new fandangled things? But here's the thing. There's levers on this machine. You saw Adam make that loop. That's just a little brake that you push, and it stops one wheel and it turns around. Okay? The extra tires allow you, when you call to get your field mowed and the guy answers the phone, he goes, that's too wet, can't mow right now. This machine, I mowed through 2 inches of standing water, and it didn't even leave a rut because of those extra tires. It's unbelievable. So you run out of excuses. The whole handlebar will pivot, and I can go right under blueberry bushes. Does anyone here have a ticket to the Sakonnet Garden Club garden tour? Okay, at the garden tour at Poor Farm on Grange Avenue, this machine will be there if you want to watch it do its thing. But I mowed those fields with it, and it is like flying a spaceship. It is, because it's quiet. It has all these buttons and knobs. You feel like you're a Jedi because you're going around these little oaks and around these little bayberries, and you're saving lives and cutting the heads off of roses. It's great. It also, the thing I really like about it that Adam didn't mention is it cuts at 8 inches high, and it cuts a nice clean cut rather than shredding the top of the tree. So if you do make a mistake and you do run over that oak tree is not shredded and ruined. It's just going to re-break from there. And I think a lot of the material at Meehan likes that. Winterberry's like that. Clethra likes that. I don't know enough about chokeberry to say it likes it, but it doesn't seem to mind it. The blueberries in 2 years will come back in fruit. There's so many blueberries at the Meehan Triangle right now, we could probably feed people. So this is a before, and you can see I'm doing it at the end of the spring. The forsythia's in bloom on the neighboring property. And again, because it makes that clean cut, all of the insects that are in those stems don't get murdered either. And it leaves it fairly tidy, I think. Right? That's the after picture. That's at Poor Farm. And again, I was able to go around the daffodils. No one was harmed. But because it's so easy to use, you're not fighting the machine. It's a Honda motor. It's quiet. We could have it running right here in here, and you could hear me without the microphone. So you could talk to people on the phone and run it at the same time. So this is just the other day, and right now the Joe Pye weed is just starting to bloom at Meehan. It's going to be another one of those 40-mile-an-hour displays of color that, again, that's like an Olmsted thing. When Olmsted would design stuff, he's like, it needs to look good at 40 miles an hour if you're driving 40 miles an hour by it. This does it by itself, just by timing the cuts, by alternating each end of the field. This is sort of in the middle of the field where we do have a grape issue, but the grape issue is we mow it every year. This is the southern end. These are the fairy circles now, the ferns. They're about 3 feet high right now. They'll probably get up to about 4 feet before they flower, and I don't think it's technically called a flower because it's a fern, but that stalk will be taller than me. So this is the southern end that was mown short this year. This is the northern end, which is really like a hedge. I mean, if you had a wet spot at your house and you didn't want to see your neighbors, you could mow this every 3 years, with that sickle bar mower, or you can mow a section every 3 years so you never have to see them. And it is crowded. It has gotten down to where it's, one person wide, but like we did at Poor Farm, if that was a problem, you could just make a pass on each side of the path and make it a little wider for humans. Oh, and now I'm going to bring out, so when I first started working in town, I worked for this young lady, and she was all about native plants, and I was all about hedges of boxwood and very English-influenced stuff that people were feeding me. And I do wonder, because we're all on a path, what would have happened if we had kept the team together. But anyways, I'd like to introduce Josie Arkins.
So push this one? Yeah, that works. Okay. Hi. I'm going to just try and talk through these slides. I'm not going to be as entertaining as him. We'll see. All right, so I'm an artist and a gardener. And this is my art, and I do maps and different perspectives of landscapes. And this is more layers. I'm into layers. When I'm planting meadows, I've done a lot of meadow planting. I'm studying grasses. I press flowers and I put them into prints. The Tree Rock Farm is up on the left, and I planted buffers along the coastline there, so there's a lot of different scales here. There's Helen's Garden on the right, so Bill's Fields at the bottom. Just the different scale and the different layers of different plants. So this is the Mean Triangle, which is just the coolest thing ever. It's like a little miniature carpet of all your favorite plants. And it's like wants to be a forest, and they're turning, and they can't decide what they want it to be. And it's got this potential to be so many different things. And it's also this time capsule that has just amazing amounts of the aronia, things that I don't even see, like Jeremy says, anywhere, are here. So I'm going to tell a story about drawing the map. I started drawing grasses and sedges right away. The bushy bluestem is obviously the most cool grass ever. And I was drawing from cut grasses from life, and I just took the plant list, which is an amazing resource, and just started drawing grasses and sedges, and you realize you know a lot more than you think you know. Just when you draw them, they're really familiar. I was also given this overhead map, which I knew right away was old because it didn't have any of the things that were actually happening at the moment on it. So, but I took this map and I traced it, and I had to do it 4 times because I had to get the scale right for the map, and you have to flip it over so it's not backwards. And so I got to know it just by doing this 4 times, the map. I did more and more grasses. I started drawing on tissue paper, thinking that I could transfer, so I wasn't just wasting all this time drawing, and that maybe I could use them towards the actual project that I was asked to do. The iris, which is the iris that everyone was like, oh, the iris. And even I, growing up, was all about the iris. That whole area was about the iris. And we used to cut it all the time, my mom and I. And more grasses, working on tissue paper, trying to get them to scale. I really knew all the grasses, which was cool. I've been trying to learn my grasses. And you pick a grass, and you look in a book, you can't find it. But if you have the name already, it's so much easier to find the grass. So the plant list is just really cool to have. So I was working on tissue paper for another project and overlapping things. So that was partly why the tissue paper came into play. And while I was doing the tissue paper drawing, I learned about praying mantis, that we have a local kind of praying mantis, not just the green kind that we knew about. So this was happening at the same time as the tissue paper, so I put that in there to explain how artists work, because that's the point of the project. So more grasses, overlapping grasses on the tissue paper to transfer. Trying to get textures, because I was trying to come up with a key for the map, trying to figure out ways that I could display the different sections that you had talked about, Adam, of the different, the bog, the fen, and trying to come up with different symbols for a key of a map. That's what I was thinking on these drawings. At the same time, I was walking the Mean Triangle all the time. It was the fall, so it was really beautiful. Taking pictures, and I started doing these encaustic paintings, which are these wax paintings, and I try to make them just sort of studies to try to think about it. So this is an early phase. It's gone further, but not too much further. This is the blueberry, which is everywhere. It's just beautiful, and every one is slightly different than the other one. It's like biodiversity to the hilt. It's just beautiful, and it's everywhere. And they're all slightly different, and I was working up some monoprints, just trying to come up with some visuals of the map. So I was using bright magic markers because it was fall. I was drawing on plexiglass, painting on the plexiglass and doing monoprints is what these are. So these are just studies. These are the briars, trying to capture some of the visuals. This is a bird's nest, very hard to see. What's cool about a bird's nest is that it's hard to see, so then you try and paint it, and it's hard to see. So that was, that's the challenge, and I'm not sure it was successful. This is my favorite map, LiDAR, I think is the word, and it shows where the plow marks go through the median triangle from that when it was part of the field to the right, those stripes. So it shows this really old history, and that's the kind of thing that was happening with this map all the time. That was really cool, and that helped sort of lay out some visuals for the map. There's not that much topography to play with the map. I think mine's going to go a lot faster than everybody else's, so that's good. Adam was really into the north view, heading south. So I started with this image. The telephone poles were there. Do you put telephone poles in art? That all question. And, is it part of the map? It ended up being important because the birds end up sitting on the telephone poles. So there are all these really cool plants that follow the line of the telephone poles on the map. So that was cool. That was, again, a monoprint with a magic marker there. And so then I started doing borders, trying to come up with the layout of the map. So this was the Sakonnet Point, because they have a property there, and I was trying to come up with a perspective for the map. So I was experimenting with different borders of trying to get the land to go towards that direction. This is the layout that happened pretty quick in terms of I had the north map that Adam set me up with. I had the visual going over, had the compass rose, it's kind of point. It ended up being a south map, which is weird. You don't usually have south at the top, but that image at the bottom sort of set that tone. Then we had to figure out what the map was going to say, like what is actually the map saying? That was like my big question to everybody. And no one actually had an answer as to what information I was trying to say on the map. It got kind of funny. Abigail was all about the flowers, the iris. She had this idea of circles pointing to certain plants on the map. So I started drawing certain plants in circles. This is the mailberry, which is a really cool flower. I haven't seen it. I didn't know about it, but I think I've seen it my whole life, wondering what it was, because it's in between a bayberry and a clethra. So it's on there, full grown, another berry plant. That's it. Turned into an encaustic painting later. This is berryland, because the whole thing, like you say, is like this carpet of berries. It's just like this mass, like a foot has like 40 plants in it. All your favorite ones. It's got winterberry, viburnum, aronia, blueberry, bayberry. I might have gotten one wrong. And, that one over there is amelanchier, shad. And that one's aronia. So all your favorite berries. It's just berryland. And how do you get that information on the map? So this is a map that I've done before, and it actually has information on it. It's got a key, it's got street names, and no one would tell me what to put on the map. The different sections don't really exist. There's no line, there's no key species for those different areas So then I started mapping the whole thing, saying this plant's here, this plant's there. And I was walking it all the time, putting all those plants down. And what happened was they mowed, and it all just disappeared. And I felt like I was really in tune with the whole thing. I knew what I was doing. I had a sense of the property, and I went, and it was just gone. And things that were there weren't there, and I didn't know what to do actually. And it was kind of funny, and it was almost nauseating because there were things that were there that just weren't there. But they were obviously still there. They were just shorter, but I didn't know how to draw them. So that's when I talked to Sue Terrio, and she said, they don't know what they're doing either. And that made me feel a lot better. And she said that there was like a educational component to the whole thing. And that made me feel better. And so I've always wanted to do like a doodle art, a coloring book. So I started turning it into a coloring book. I just decided to put all the different species on the map. Not even where they were, just on there as a pretty picture. So I just started doing the swamp rose, the tupelo, and I started actually tracing out of books, which was really cool because you actually learn where they're a little pointy here and the ellipse goes this way, and all those things you learn by tracing that you might not know if you didn't trace. So that was actually a real learning experience in tracing. I still had to then draw them because they weren't to scale or anything for the map, but tracing was really cool, and I was just collecting images and trying to get some overlap and some movement. The ferns are there and not there. So resources, I used the computer a lot, but I used a lot of books. I had so many cool books, and you started recognizing illustrators because I had different grass books and stuff like that, and some were old and some were new, and the research was really fun. This was a book that belonged to my grandparents, and when I opened it up, there's a pressed flower. That thing in the top is a pressed flower. So I did find a few pressed flowers in old books. That was really pretty cool. And this one, while I'm researching sedges, I found this that said brought in by the Vikings. And that's just a little kind of thing you find when you're researching that you write on a piece of paper that you then forget about. But it's a cool little thing to come across. So I put this in here to admit that I'm a landscaper and a gardener for people, and I actually hate mulch and lawns. And I do spread a lot of mulch every year, and I understand why we have to do it, but you really should let the magic happen. And this piece is a little bit where you can let it go, but you can have a straight line every once in a while. There's an aesthetic. It's like my husband didn't really get how I dressed or my art or even how I landscaped or anything really, but he's starting to understand the aesthetic and appreciate, I think, the complexity of it all. And I think you should really let some areas go because really there are a lot of things that can happen. This is, I think, the doodle art where it stands now, and I hope you get to fill it in sometime. And I do hope to add actually all 110 species to it. It is a work in progress, just like the Mean Triangle, and it is an elusive thing, and maybe I'd have more forest and Abigail would have more meadow, and see what the balance of all will happen. So that's the map as it is now filled in. This is a map that a friend filled in. This is another group of friends that filled this one in. And this is another one that a group of friends filled in. So I guess just let the magic happen in your yard a little bit. I guess another thing is this Lyland is actually just over 2 acres. It's most people's house lots, which is an amazing thing to think about. Think about what you have on how much lawn you have. I mean, I like playing soccer, like the most of them, but just think about all those things that you can do, because this is actually a house lot that can have so much potential on it. So there you go. Thanks.
So it is enough to make a person cry, right? I mean, it's just really incredible what's happened. Working with these 3 people and the others who volunteered to help on this project, just exposing the magic. And we've never concentrated quite this much on any single property, but it's been so, so powerful. And to have biologists, artists, tree people, just such a mix of people bringing their skills and their talent and their thought and their passion to this. So I thank all 3 of you for doing this. I mean, it's just been unbelievable. Okay, now the lights can come up if you can bear to let go of that. Sorry. So this is a question and answer period. I'm going to step away from the microphone. Vina, our newly hired administrator, we're so happy to welcome her, Vina Booth, will have a microphone And if you just raise a hand if you have a question, and she'll come to you. And maybe there are no questions, but if there are, there's a lot to take in.
Hi, something that Adam had touched on briefly. My name is Hyla, I'm from Coquonset Lane. The grapevines are just everywhere. Is there anything we can do to sort of keep them in check?
So I had a slide of the Boy Scouts hand clipping and filling up Jeremy's pickup truck with grapevines. So just bring your grapevines to Jeremy's house. And but I think, so fox grape, it's a native species. I think if it's smothering a plant that you want to do well, then cut it off. But it produces a lot of food, so it's one of those. Yeah, it's one of those species that it just does really well. It does well in disturbed areas. I don't know. Cut it back. You're not gonna. It's always gonna come back though. So yeah, but we have to mow. If we didn't mow, every year or two, it would take over. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Jeremy's son. Don't bring the grapevines to our house, please. Are there any potential ways to use this as an educational piece of land for maybe the school students? Or I'm young, so I think of the people below me, and it would have been really cool to be able to go here as a middle schooler, or maybe even draw this picture in school and know it's in town. It'd be kind of cool.
Oh, great question. All right. I did ask him to ask a question. I didn't know what it was going to be. I have to say, and I was talking about this earlier, this place has taught me. And I don't know how to explain how amazing that is. All I do is learn. This is the only thing I know a lot about. It's the only thing I do. It's how I use my CPU cycles in my brain, our gardens and trees and all the friends that live in them. I think if you walked kids through that place, they would experience something that they've never seen. You can go pick blueberries. I mean, I have blueberry bushes at my house, but you're never going to see 2,000 of them in 50 feet. People don't do that. This is something that nature has done that we get to experience, and you just have to try it. Take a walk, park on the side of the road. You do have to worry about ticks, and the path isn't perfect. Wear big boots, but take a quick walk. It's 5 minutes, and you'll learn something. Everyone has picture this or Google Glass. You can know everything you're looking at. It's not like we're some massive brains that have learned all these things. We've had a lot of help. We've helped each other. Adam's taught me so many plants in the last 2 years that I've been walking over or maybe even weeding out of gardens. Don't tell anybody. But again, as an educational experience, if each and every one of you walked it or drove by it, parked next to it, and again, it's seasonal. It's a movie that changes every week. Wait till you see the Joe Pye weed.
I'd also like to respond to your question, because we're actively involved with the school here in Little Compton. And Josie has generously offered that map that she did with no coloring on it to be distributed, and it will include on the back a plant list. We're also thinking that the way we'll open this property to the public, anybody could walk on it now, but that was our intention, was to make it a public and an educational tool. So taking any one of these experts, really, on it with young people to share is just a fabulous, possibility. And also for adults, too. I mean, we would think that what we would like to do is have some sort of opening where we have small groups of people go through the property with some of us that have been working on it to learn about it. But the mapping that Josie did, and she does this, you see she's talking about doodle art. You take that map, and a young person can do whatever they want with it, but there's a lot of information on it. So thank you for asking that question, because it is really important to us to feel like we are bringing in young people as future conservationists, and this is a way to do it. Good question.
I have a question for Adam. Yes, it is. Adam, what's your hope for the mower that you have, considering some of the people here tonight might be landowners?
So I think the idea is to just demonstrate that this type of mowing exists and it has some benefits over the conventional brush hog rotary mower. I think maybe allowing, so Jeremy's sort of the first person that we've allowed to use this machine, but we want to encourage other landscapers to try it out and maybe encourage landowners to ask their landscapers to use machines like this if they want to achieve some of the stuff that we're trying to do. But it's out there, it's like I said, it's haymaking equipment, so it's if someone wants to try to get an old haymaking mower and try this themselves, they can. This particular machine, we have a trailer for it now, and we bring it around to our different properties and mow. But we currently don't manage other properties that aren't owned by SPA with this machine. That's for other landscapers to do. So Jeremy's our first certified mower. Yeah, he flies the spaceship. Yeah. Thanks.
If that's it. Oh. Yep.
My name's John. The early photographs going back to, I guess it was pre-World War II, showed the extensive plowing. What's anybody's guesstimate of the richness of diversity that's coming in there now? How much of that might have been a seed bank stretching back to even surviving through the kind of plowing and construction that happened at that place decades and decades ago?
That's a really good question that I think we've asked each other a bit in these discussions. And I think that there are a couple factors that have led to this property retaining that diversity that used to be widespread all around town that has been lost through different land management decisions over the decades. Its proximity to the road, but also known, at least post-war, was really farming it seems. The soils are probably acidic and low in nitrogen, so the invasives aren't going to come in there and out-compete the native species. I think that there are probably other properties, there's definitely other properties around that kind of have this kind of impressive collection of flora, but this is the map that Josie had in her presentation of the LiDAR. It was just sort of, this was just kind of carved off because of other factors, and it's kind of remained that way. Also, its proximity, not being right on the ocean, but close enough that a lot of what we classify there as maritime shrubland that is regulated by the, I don't know, it's a bit of a mystery. I would like to know more about what the meadows looked like in this town 100, 200, 300 years ago.
Would it be possible to do any soil borings and then tease the borings apart and see what's in there in terms of seed bank?
We could, I don't know how you do a seed bank analysis. You could just dig it up and see what germinates, or?
It hasn't been disturbed.
Yeah.
Really, right? It's been mowed constantly. It hasn't been disturbed, say, since the road went in 1936, whatever. So that lack of disturbance is why there's no Rosa multiflora or other things. So I do think the seed bank is old, and then it hasn't had a lot of the new disturbances that, all these new weeds that we have. So we all want to let our grass grow and have this happen, but it isn't actually what's going to happen in our fields. The roses will come up, but I think that those plants are like, they're all sucker plants, those roses, they all sucker up and they create this mat, and the way they all grow, they just suckered into each other and created this amazing carpet of shrubs. It just hasn't been disturbed, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And another mystery to me, at least, is, so this was mowed every fall. We have a letter in our binder for this property that Fred Bridge wrote us 20-something years ago about the timing of the mowing that year. And it has been mowed once a year, every fall. So why would we change that? Because that seemed to really suit this property, and it has all these species and it's kept all. So like, why would we want to do something aside from mow it once every fall? And I don't really know the answer to that, but I'm hoping that our changes that we're doing now won't throw things out of whack, because but we're allowing to produce more fruit and more flower, and the point of those graphs I was showing is just to show how much more available space there is for the wildlife to utilize if you stagger the mowing and mow in the spring and all that. So you have anything to add, Jim?
Well, the other thing, you sort of said what I was going to say. I want to put my hand up. Well, the other thing is you're getting that sponginess back by not putting a multiple 1,000-pound machine on the land, because we only have like an 800-pound or 600-pound machine. I guess 800 when I use it, but it doesn't have the downforce. And what I really think when a property is managed correctly, you don't, like, I wear minimalist shoes every day to work because I walk on a sponge. And it would, and now when you walk in Meehan, you walk on a sponge because you're walking on that, sphagnum moss and club mosses, and those are all indicators of low pH anyway. So we definitely have low pH. One thing observation that Jason Burchard mentioned when he was doing the planting is it's a super swamp. Because there's remember that, Sue? It's a super swamp because there's no place for that water to go. And we have plenty of wet spots in Little Compton. My yard is one of them. But the water ultimately can go right down the driveway. At Meehan, it's trapped. So in a way that's sort of artificial, because we built roads all the way around it and there's no drain out of it, but the result is really awesome. So I think we just stick with it. I would never want to drain it.
What about the field across the street to the west? That's a large field. I don't know if I'm assuming.
Do you want to talk about it?
So the idea is, we hope, that there's contagion. This is the way we do conservation, too. We find a little spot, and we hope that it'll spread, right? And so I have actually had a conversation with the landowners across the street about considering this type of management, and they're very interested.
Well, is it the same land type? Is it the same foliage? Is it the same grasses and all that?
Hard to say at this point. I think that that's one of the things that's happened about this particular piece. It's a little bit, it's more than a little bit unusual because it has been so undisturbed for so long. Where that field, who knows how recently it was in agriculture, it's pretty wet. I don't know if you remember, but I can see Meredith Cornell standing in that field with her easel trying to capture those Iris prismatica. And Josie with her mother picking them, maybe. I don't know where you were picking them, but anyway, but it's probably not very much agriculture took place because it was so wet. So it's hard to say. The magic will happen maybe on that property too, but it might be different from what's happening on Meehan. Yeah. But that's the intention, is to try and spread it. and even over on the other side as well, we're hoping. But we'll see. Thank you so much. It's really great to share this with you, really. And you'll be being kept posted about progress and magic appearing. And if there's anyone you know that's not here tonight, the YouTube of this evening's presentation will be on our website in short order, so it can be watched that way. Thank you, and good evening.